You've wanted to introduce voluntary superannuation instead of compulsory superannuation. Is there a growing push in the Liberal Party at least to block this increase of super from 9 to 12%? Because there are people like you in the Liberal Party who don't want superannuation at all.
Yeah, that's right. So, look, my problem with superannuation, it gives $40 billion in tax concessions to the wealthiest 20 to 30%. Costs $35 billion a year in fees, so that's $75 billion just on super. Now, if you compare that to the cost of the pension, it's $52 billion. So the pensions for about gets the bottom 70% of people are on the pension, and there's this argument that somehow super is going to make the pension reduce the burden on the pension. But that's not actually true. The number of people who've gone off the pension has only decreased by about 75% to 70% in the last 25 years, at a massive cost to the budget, as I just explained then. And furthermore, people who retire with a mortgage has increased from 10% in the mid-90s to 40%, and the number of people who are retiring without a mortgage has dropped from 70% to 40%. So what's happening is people are retiring, they're pulling out their super as a lump sum, they're then paying off their mortgage, and then they go on the pension. So it's a false economy for a very expensive $75 billion a year. And can I just say, those super funds invest $600 billion offshore, and you've got to ask yourself why they haven't invested in the Australian car industry to keep that up and running. And that's a good reason why super's failing, because the problem with super is it buys assets, it doesn't build assets.
Well, they probably wanted some decent returns. Murray, what do you make of that?
If Gerard's got a problem with people using their superannuation to pay off their mortgage, maybe he and his government could do something about housing affordability. I mean, they've only been in power for 6 or 7 years. Maybe they could start thinking about that. The reality is that superannuation
we've cut taxes, income taxes, Murray.
Superannuation has given millions of Australians a dignified retirement for the first time. And if Gerard and his colleagues are saying that we should get rid of superannuation or it should become voluntary, what they are saying is that Australians should be condemned to not having a dignified retirement. That's what used to happen in the bad old days in the 1970s, the 1960s, the 1950s, and superannuation has fixed that, and that's why we
Have you got any evidence of that, Murray? Australia survived for 200 years without super.
Just one more question
if you speak
on this.
To any,
Gerard, sorry, can I just ask you, Gerard Rennick, because you said in your speech that you've done some internal polling on your view that super should be voluntary, not compulsory, and that you had support. How many support you, and can you name any?
Oh, it's a handful, and I'm not naming names. Yeah.
Well, Andrew Bragg's gone on the record about that, hasn't he? So he must be one of his supporters.
Yeah, he's got a slightly different view to myself, but he thinks that it's not really helping low-income earners. And he's right, because it punishes people who stay at home and look after their children. It punishes carers. It punishes people on low incomes who would otherwise, if your income's below the tax-free threshold, you're going to pay 15% on your super contribution, which you wouldn't otherwise. And it punishes people in the regions, because the regions need that money. It gets sent off to the white-collar workers in, professionals in Sydney and Melbourne, and very little of it is reinvested into the regions. And another great example, we need to get dams built.
We'll have to pick this up another day. We are right out of time, Gerard Rennick and Murray. We will pick it up another day, and I noticed still talking about the Bureau and their data, so I'm sure we can touch on that another day as well. Thank you, gentlemen.